Hello everyone, and welcome back to day 7 of the 12 Days of Yule Challenge. Today's prompt is Connecting to Your Land in Winter. I'll be totally honest and say that to me, it's harder to connect with my land in winter. Even in spring, I find it slightly more difficult where I live because even though I live in a bit of a smaller city, it's still a city and a neighborhood, so I'm surrounded by houses and other people. I deal with generalized and social anxiety, and even when I'm in my backyard by myself, I get nervous and feel like someone is watching me, even when I know no one actually is. We live on the corner and have one of those metal fences you can see through, and I know when people drive or walk by, they can easily look into our backyard and see me working out there. So each time I go outside, it takes a little bit for me to start to feel more comfortable and be able to start to connect with the land and plant energies again. To me, it's always been easier to connect with nature and the land in more natural spaces, like the woods or forest, that aren't so crowded with people. I can feel the natural energies better when they aren't competing with those of people and machines. I love the peaceful feel of the forest and being surrounded by woods where all you can hear are the sounds of nature and not all the human noises and cars and such. I love to garden and started out with a small in-ground corner of the backyard, but have added several raised beds over the years as well. Right now, my whole garden area is a mess with tons of weeds in the walkways and even some of my raised beds. I haven't had time to do much weeding, but I'll get it looking nice by spring again. The biggest gardening season is spring into summer, but I usually also plant things for fall into winter. Most years, I start seeds indoors for things like dwarf tomatoes, broccoli, and cauliflower, then direct sow lettuces, spinach, arugula, radish, and carrots right into the garden for fall. This year, I've been dealing with a lot and didn't feel up to starting the fall seeds when it was time, so I just didn't do it. The only seeds I started for fall were a couple tomatoes that I started in half-gallon pots on the patio, then transplanted to my raised beds. I also bought a couple yellow squash plants that were on sale to plant in the fall and have gotten about 8 squashes off them. Unfortunately, the snails kept chewing the squash when they were still small and causing them to rot, so a lot of them I never got to harvest and they just ended up in the compost. By now, I've taken out the fall plants for the winter and composted what I could. I love working in my organic garden, and this spring worked on creating a pollinator flower area in my in-ground garden. I dedicated that work to Gaia. I went with either Texas natives or other heat-loving flowering plants that the different pollinators would love. Some of the plants really thrived, like the sages, but others didn't do nearly as well, and a few even ended up dying. That was sad. I love getting my hands in the soil and connecting with the earth in that way. A big part of why I garden all organically is to work with nature rather than against it, like you do when using synthetic chemicals and fertilizers that just kill the natural soil microbiology that plants need to grow and thrive. I feel like as a witch and a pagan, and really even just a human in general as the top of the food chain, it's very important to do our best to take care of the earth and live as eco-friendly and sustainably as we reasonably can. It really hurts me to see how wasteful some people are and how so many don't care about the earth at all. I work with Gaia as my goddess and can really feel her presence when I'm working out in my garden sometimes. I often dedicate working out there to honoring her. Like I've mentioned before, I have a bin system where I make my own compost, so I know there is nothing in it that will hurt my garden. I add food scraps, garden clippings, fallen leaves, eggshells, and even coffee grounds. I use my homemade compost to feed my soil and help keep my plants healthy. I also have a vermicompost worm bin where I feed them food scraps and get to harvest their castings for my garden too. Organic gardening has really become a big passion of mine, and I've spent many years learning about my specific area of Central Texas and what grows well here. One way to connect to your land all year round is simply spending time outside and observing what goes on. Learn what native plants grow in your area. You can work on sun mapping your yard area to see where the sun hits different parts during the different times of the day. To do this, you just go outside several times throughout the day and note where the sun hits your garden directly. You can do this during summer only, as that's when the sun is at its highest and brightest, or do it during each season to see the differences. Sun mapping can help you know exactly how much sunlight every area of your yard gets so that you can plant accordingly for happy, thriving plants. Over the years, I've taken classes at places like my local nursery, as well as taking a bunch online during the pandemic. I've experimented with different growing methods and types of plants to see for myself what works and what doesn't. Recently, I've been more interested in researching and learning about the Fae and gnomes to see if they are maybe something I could work with to help in my garden. I saw Ivy the Occultist talking about how she worked with gnomes this year, and also had a pen pal tell me how she works with the Fae in her garden, so it got me curious to learn more about it. One way I connect with the land in winter is to feed the local wildlife and watch them through the windows. We have a hanging bird feeder, and my mom also puts out a bowl of seed on the table that the squirrels eat from. Last year, I made some special hanging birdseed ornaments that I put out for the birds, and they really loved that. I'll leave a link for that video down below. We also have a bunch of deer that live here, but it's illegal to feed them. Another way I connect in winter while it's still cold is to start planning out my spring garden. I start some of my seeds early indoors under grow lights while it's still cold outside to give them a head start on growing and being ready for the warm season. Over the past few days, I've been going through my seed boxes and deciding what varieties I'll be growing for next year. It's always fun to plan out the garden for a new year, and I always like to try a few new varieties each year to experiment. Where I live in Texas, the weather can be pretty unpredictable, especially the last several years. But in general, during the winter, while it is colder at night, it's warm enough during the day to be outside as long as you're, wearing a jacket and stuff. So I like to go outside and sit and meditate. This is a nice way to connect with your land any time of the year. I love to sit and ground myself to connect and feel the energies of the earth. How do y'all connect with your land in winter? Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope I'll see you back for the next video in the 12 Days of Yule challenge. Blessings. Bye.